Today I'm going to show you how to section a fender on a K5 Blazer. I did a 4-inch suspension lift and 35 1250s on the stock wheels. And of course, when you're turning and articulate it all, it rubs right into the bottom corner on the rear of the fender. Thought it was going to be pretty close. Some guys say you can get away with it, but pulling into driveways, that kind of stuff, it actually hits that bottom section. I can find it here. There it is. So what we'll do is actually take a sliver out of this whole section all the way up and try to retain this factory line just to make it look clean. Pretty much easiest thing you can do is measure from the inside of the fender to your inner fender well itself, and then transfer it with some regular masking tape. Get your line cut out. I'll show you the other side that I already did. Got it roughed in yesterday, so it turned out pretty nice. Happy with everything. Just a skim coat of mud on it. Let's see if you can tell here. Roughly have about, let's say about 5.5 inches of clearance now. And I did actually take it in all the way to the inner fender itself, so there's not a whole lot of gap there anymore. And trim the bottom just in case it does ever rub again. Won't have to be cutting tires with it or anything like that. So about 5.5 afterwards. I want to say I took out about 1.25 inches. Let's see, take the measurement here real quick. This one is showing right at about 3 inches, so that's pretty awesome. That's more than I was expecting, actually. So I moved about 2.25 inch material. So I'll get it all taped up and measured out, kind of show you the lines that I'm doing, and then a couple tools, basically just angle grinders, nothing crazy wise, body hammer, and of course a welder. But I'll get it taped up, show you a couple pictures of it here shortly. What you're gonna end up with is something that's kind of like this. Obviously we're taking more material out than just this. So first thing you want to do is measure from your fender itself into the inner fender. On my truck's about 1.25 inches. So I measured from the body line 1.25 inches. That'll give me placement for finding the inner fender. You want to cut this inner structure inside here on the back side of the fender as well, so you can kind of watch as you're using your thin cutoff wheel. Leave just a little bit of material to weld to, because once you cut this inner structure, start pulling it back in, it gets really flimsy. This is all that supports the bottom of the actual fender itself. So you're going to be ending up welding the outer skin to the inner structure stub. So just leave yourself, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch of material to be able to play with in there. Obviously this outside line, you want it to come up to a point. So that way when you start to bring this back, you try to mate these two surfaces together. What I'm doing first is just getting my line cut for finding the inner structure. And then we're gonna cut out all of this material of the inner, so that way we can actually slide the outer skin farther back. So we'll end up cutting into here somewhere at the end of the day. And that's how we're gonna get it really tight to this inner fender well, like the other side was. So it takes a little bit of cutting. Definitely use any kind of tape. You can keep your lines as straight as possible. That makes it super easy to stitch it back together. Worst case, if you are off, keep these little sliver pieces that you cut out, because you can always fill them back in if you made a big mistake up top or down low. You can't fill in with your MIG. So I'll get the first rough cut done. And always clean up your material first as much as you can, because it gets pretty flimsy once you actually separate it. I will end up putting a couple pie cuts in this as well. That way we can bend this bottom end out to actually catch the different groove here. So I'll keep those little tricks and stuff updated, but I'll make the first couple cuts, pull the tape off of it, show you what exactly I'm cutting out on the inside of the well. It's pretty self-explanatory. And just use your tape line to go in straight. I usually take it actually as a little bit of a bevel, just that way you don't cut too much off on the inside and get into your inner fender well itself. But it should be pretty self-explanatory here once I make a couple cuts, get everything kind of loosened up where you can see what you're working with. We'll do a little pie section up top here so it has some kind of a hinge room to move once you start pulling the fender piece back into the rest of the fender. So hopefully this one comes out as clean as the other one does. If not, it's just metal, guys. Break out the welder. You can always fix it. A little bit of hammering, no worries. I'll show you my test fender to get a little better idea of what I did. This one was just dented up, so I had to replace it. So basically the same thing. You know, you just cut out your pie section, and then I cut into the actual rolled body line there, and then just started working it back together. I did this one pretty rough just because I was throwing the fender out anyways. It was all dented to hell, but that'll give you an idea of what you're going for, and just take it small sections at a time, work it back in. Tighter the better on this one. Initial cuts are done. You can see that with it being hinged like this, it'll actually let it kind of push back up into the fender pretty well. We're still going to be going a lot more. That's why I gave it more of a gap up top. So now that I've got it pretty much flush with the inner fender well, if you can still see the structure there that I left hanging out to be able to weld this piece back into to give it some rigidity again. What we'll do now is I'm going to measure the distance from our cut to the roll, and we're going to mark that out here, and we're actually going to go past the inner fender. Should be, I'm guessing, somewhere about Hairsville. So maybe another, I don't know, roughly inch we're going to cut off. I'll get it all taped up and show you. That way you can actually see where the inner fender sits, where the structure I left on this back side of the fender, and that'll get us pretty darn close. A little bit of grinding, polishing, get it in there nice and tight. What you want to do, 4.5 inch angle grinder. Benchmark Abrasives has a fantastic disc, the 4.5, that lasts forever. It's like a 16th, and they get them in a pack of like 25, something like that. They're pretty much, you can go one disc for 2 fenders at least. So really strong, best ones I've found. Give them a holler. Yeah, so far basically an angle grinder to cut. I used a DA to sand it down, and 80 grit roll lock will help you out there. Turns out to be just about 3/4 of an inch if you keep your line. So I just marked it off 3/4 up until about here. Started tapering it back to this line at the very top. Should get me pretty close. We can always take a little bit off this side if we need to tighten it up a little bit, but that should be about the shape we're going for. And we should be able to clear up this gap here pretty nice. All this stuff will fit back inside here, and with any luck, we should be basically butting up to my little bit of inner structure that we left previously. So I'll get this cut out, get a better look at pushing it in, seeing if the lines make sense and work pretty close. And the second cut's done. This is roughly what you're actually taking out. If you can see how dramatic that is, actually. Doesn't seem like a whole lot when you're working on it until you sit back and look. That's a little more than 3 inches that we had before. So I mean, we're definitely getting at least 2.5 inches more clearance. This is the inner structure of the fender. You can see there's actually 2 pieces of steel here. This is the inner structure, and this is your inner fender well. Make sure when you're putting this back together you don't weld your outer skin to the inner fender well, because you'll have a bad time. Never get it apart again. From here, I haven't really massaged this at all. I just cut it, kind of eyeballed it, and you can see that it's going to be pretty darn close. And what I'll do is start at the top after I get it sandwiched here in the middle, start spot welding it, and just kind of work it in your way down. Right at this bend, I did put 3 pie cuts in it, so that way you can actually easily move this. So you can see there's a big difference between, my nice miscut there, cutting inner structure. Don't do that. But this will allow you to arc it correctly and make it match back up. So pretty simple. I don't know, probably got 30 minutes in the project so far. Kind of cheating because I know what to do, but another thing you want to make sure of, get some good leather gloves. These masks, you can actually get the different cartridges on Amazon for 20 bucks for 2 pairs. Definitely worth keeping that abrasive and everything out of your lungs. Get some good safety glasses. This thing cuts metal excellent, and it cuts skin even better. I've cut through my leather gloves before and actually got into the skin, and it's not fun. It takes forever to heal, and it always seems like it cuts you right at one of your creases in your finger, one of your knuckle joints. So be safe. These things are very, very, very unforgiving once they touch skin. So I'll get this kind of stitched in a little bit closer. That way we can see we're going to be right on the money, I believe, with tucking her in where we want. I'll actually take this piece once we get spotted up, bend it down so we can get to the inner structure, weld this outer skin to it easily with the welder, then we'll just bend her back up when we're done. So I'll get to stitching on it a little bit and update you here shortly. Got it stitched in place. We'll go back through and full weld it. That way we can grind it smooth. Cutting through this bent section, that miscut kind of screwed me. It allowed this to flex, so I got it as close as I could. I'll just have to hammer it out, dolly it out. You can see it buttoned up pretty nice to the bottom, the original frame or fender area. I took a crescent wrench, tightened it down, bent this out as nice as I could. You can see with that little sliver I left in there, when I push this up, I'll be able to mate the old piece of the inner structure back to it, and then I'll just fold it back up. You know, a couple little simple cheap body hammers. You don't need anything majorly expensive. There's no magic to these either. Don't hit real hard. This is an aftermarket fender. Pretty noticeable difference between thickness, I would say. The other side was not nearly as easy to just bend with your finger to get it stitched together. But I want to say this was like $130 shipped to my door off eBay. So had to do a little bit of door clearancing to get it halfway close, but overall pretty happy with it for more of a trail rig than anything. So not doing any kind of frame off resto Kindig design metal work, but this will look pretty nice with a couple of little skims of Bondo on it, and it'll be a hell of a lot better than the people that just go and just cut them off, leave a jagged edges front and rear. But that'll definitely get us on the way. I'll get it welded up, get the inner structure welded, bend this back in, throw it in some skim, and call this one pretty much done, so we can finish up my long project of painting this thing, putting a soft topper on it. But pretty fun little truck so far. Did a LQ9 6-liter swap in it, and 4L65, new radiator, putting the air conditioning back on it, put new interior in it. So now it's just the final step of finishing up body work. I'm painting it Victory Red again, so maybe we'll do a little video on paint prep, that kind of stuff. So thanks for watching. You got any questions, throw them in the comments. Well, got done tacking it all together. When you're all said and done, it should look something like this. Welded the inner structure here, tapped it back up with a hammer. I think it turned out pretty nice. You probably wouldn't really notice it. I don't think anybody's really going to notice the difference between the front and the rears. I'll get it ground down, stick a little filler on it, sand her up, hit it with some primer, and show you the end result.